Alan Clum served as operations manager for Mount Pleasant Waterworks for many years until he was named general manager this past summer. Today, I talk one-on-one with Alan for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Alan Clum, welcome to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. It's an honor to be here. It's nice to finally meet you.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it greatly. Obviously,
yeah, man, I've heard a lot about you.
Oh, that's good. I hope it's a good thing. Oh, it is a good thing.
All good, man. All good.
Yeah, thank
God.
You
stayed after it a long time. I appreciate the hard work you put in.
Yes, sir. Well, next year will be 10 years, actually, for Quintin's Close-Ups.
I know. Yeah. So it's awesome.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Man with a mission and a passion.
Yeah, and I know that you have a mission and passion for water because obviously, as of July 1st, you became the new general manager for Mount Pleasant Waterworks. Let me ask you this, Alan. What is the biggest difference about being GM versus operations manager?
Excellent question, Quintin. And you're right. I do have a passion for what I do. Background is in science. I'm a scientist. That's my formal training. As operations manager, I was focused on daily operations, as the title would imply. So worked very closely with staff, wastewater treatment staff, water treatment staff, the laboratory. Really a lot of staff interaction and oversight over the operations and quality of water and the wastewater. I think the biggest change for me that I'm adjusting to, I explained it the other night, so it's an interesting question. I feel like now I'm standing kind of right in the middle of the seesaw. And on one side, I have that operations side, and I have our company interest in day-to-day operations. And on the other side, it's outreaching to the public, interacting with the political bodies, and understanding the customers. So it is a little bit more. I would say it's two sides. One side is operational, daily operations of the company, and the other side is taking care of the customers and the political needs in our community. So there has been a change, and it has been an adjustment.
What is the company interest, and what are the customers looking for from you all?
Customers, the interactions I have with the customers, Quintin, they have been very positive. Most of our customers have experienced a very positive interaction with our MPW team. So I'm constantly receiving compliments. But a lot of the interaction I have with customers, there may be complaints over bills, issues with bills to discuss, questions over development. What do we do in our community with water and wastewater services if they don't have services? Enjoy all of those interactions. It's great to see it from several different angles, understand what the customer needs from us, how can we meet their needs. So it's really been a good experience. I've enjoyed it.
How are you meeting the customer's needs right now?
Wow. Every day, 365, 24/7, we are providing clean water. The one thing I tell our staff that unlike other places I have worked, I am fortunate and blessed to work in a business and in an industry where we provide a critical services every day. Every day to you and to our customers, we're providing drinking water, which is sustaining life. If you cut your faucet on right now, Quintin, you will have a glass of water. That's very rewarding for me. At the same time, we're protecting it on the back end and what we discharge into the Charleston Harbor. We roughly discharge 9 to 10 million gallons a day, depending on demand and what's going on, of high-quality effluent, that's treated wastewater, into the Charleston Harbor. So when you ask me what do I do on a daily basis and what impacts do we have on the community, all of us at Mount Pleasant Waterworks, not only are we supporting you in your daily activities, but we're protecting the environment. That's a very rewarding experience for all of our staff.
Yes, sir.
Certainly that's not my job. It takes all of us, 157, to push that ball forward and make it happen. So it's a very rewarding job. It's a rewarding field to work in. And you're right, I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about environmental protection. I've dedicated my career to that. And certainly dedicated my career to high-quality drinking water. So, it's just been a great opportunity.
What is the state of environmental protection as you know it?
What is the state? I think we have come a long way, Quintin. From the 70s Clean Water Act, when we really started understanding and better understanding these pollutants, the waterways, we have really made a big impact. A lot of times there's doom and gloom discussion out there with environmental protection and where we're heading and population increasing, and you hear terms resiliency, sustainability. But I think it's important to understand where we have come from. We have made huge steps forward to protecting the environment. Now we have pressures that we've never seen before, and we're better understanding what the future looks like every day. But I think it would be a mistake to not acknowledge how far we have come. I think we've made huge gains. A long way to go, not saying that, and there will be challenges that we don't fully understand today. But I am proud of the work we've done in the past. We've come a long way.
What are those challenges, Alan, that you still don't understand?
Well, Quintin, I think, there was a lot of discussion over energy management. What does that look like in the U.S.? And that can get as simple as what powers my car. Am I putting, petroleum products in my car, or am I putting electricity in my car? And if I put electricity in my car, where does that electricity come from? And how is that electricity generated? And what are the consequences of electric power? And so I think, understanding all of that is something I believe we're all struggling with. I think there are, pharmaceuticals, different developments in the chemical manufacturing world is continually evolving. So I think us trying to understand that, how that impacts our environment, our health, our water sources, those will be challenges into the future. And they're very complex.
And I know Mount Pleasant Waterworks wants to reflect and represent the diverse population that are really responsible for serving to provide clean water and sewer services. What is the Waterworks reflecting and representing today? I know it's a redundant question.
Yeah, it is. I think the key is when you look at our mission statement, it's obviously to provide high quality water and protect the environment. I think we need to, your question was related around diversity of our community. I think it's Mount Pleasant Waterworks' mission to provide high quality water, to protect the environment for our entire community. And that's what we strive to do.
Yes, sir. What are the demographics of the town of Mount Pleasant?
Demographics of the town, Quintin, I am not certain. The demographics, I don't know if you mean, age-related, race-related. So I'm not certain how to answer that question.
No worries. Let me ask you, this might be a Mount Pleasant town government question, but how have the demographics had an impact on the Mount Pleasant Waterworks?
Yeah, Quintin, I can only answer that as it pertains to our employees. If we're talking about demographics within our company, I'm not certain of the demographics in the town. If you're referring to African American or Hispanics or Caucasians, I'm not certain what those demographics look like. I believe I saw recently, but I may not be accurate, that it was roughly 5 to 7% African American within the town of Mount Pleasant. But I think you're right. That question would be better suited for someone on town council.
Now, obviously, you talked earlier about customer service. How are you continuously improving in product systems and process to maximize that customer satisfaction?
Oh, Quintin, man, innovation is something that has a long heritage at Mount Pleasant Waterworks, and we are constantly pushing our staff and the envelope with innovative solutions to, one, not only efficiently serve our customers, but also to improve their experience. And, the first example that comes to mind are the new smart meters that we've installed. So typically, a homeowner in most of America, you get a bill once a month, and you can understand your water usage once a month. You understand that. Mount Pleasant Waterworks, we have implemented a pretty innovative metering technology. In the event that you register through our smart portal, which I recommend everyone listening to that, please do. You have to sign up as a customer, free service. But if you do that, you can check your water usage. You can see exactly what you used yesterday, Quintin. So you can control your water usage. And more importantly, there's a feature that if you have continuous consumption is how we refer to it. But think of a leak, think of a toilet or a water break in your house. Mount Pleasant Waterworks, we will alert you to let you know that you have continuous consumption. I was talking with someone yesterday. They were on their way out of town and they received the email. Now, typically, if they did not have the smart metering technology, they would have enjoyed their vacation and come home only to find a disaster in their house. Well, because of the email that we sent, they were alerted very quickly and able to respond to that. So it's really is, when you think of innovation and how we try to enhance the customer experience, we are continually working to improve the customer experience. And that's just one example, Quintin. I could go on and on and on. The one thing I'm really proud of working with our staff is they are very innovative, and that's true with every facet. From the metering, I could tell you examples from our water treatment, wastewater treatment, from a variety of different departments where we push the envelope, always looking at innovation.
Yes, sir. And how much data have you been able to collect with the advanced meter infrastructure system?
Wow, how much data? The one thing, Quentin, the one thing with data in our world, and not just the water industry, but everywhere, is there is increasingly large quantities of data to process and to understand and to wrap our heads around. So we have wonderful information from that AMI system, and part of that metering data is how do we better understand it and get it into the customer's hands so they can make decisions. I think we have come so far, but we also have a long way to go to make sure we fully understand that information.
Yes, sir. Okay, we're closing out on 2021, as you know, but how many meters had to be investigated by the Mount Pleasant Waterworks?
There is a set, so we have replaced all of the meters, so all of the old meters are out of our system. And we have a program where we test meters that are installed to verify that they're meeting the standards and that they're meeting the requirements. There are standards and requirements, Quintin, for those meters, not only when they're manufactured, but we continue to test and ensure that those meters are reading accurately.
Okay, and I'm going kind of off balance here with these questions, but how do you continue to reinvest in infrastructure to keep the water system operating reliably that really places a demand on your financial resources?
Wow, Quintin, that is a wonderful question. In the nation, our infrastructure grade, depending on whether you're talking about water or wastewater, it hovers in the D range, D minus to a D. It is in poor condition. Again, a lot of this infrastructure was in the 60s and 70s, so it is aging infrastructure. We have done a great job maintaining our assets in Mount Pleasant Waterworks, but to that point, we reinvest every year roughly $20 million. That's not a set number, but that's generally financially and workload-wise what we can handle. So it's roughly $20 to $21 million. We're going through that process right now to determine our next 5-year CIP plan. But the point is, we spend a lot of money on assets that you and I can't see very often. They're under the ground. People take that for granted, and it really is a problem. It's a national problem. I think we've done a great job as a company staying ahead of that, but understand it is a very expensive endeavor.
Where do you search? I know this is a simplistic question, but where do you search for alternative water sources?
Wow, yeah, sure. We're jumping around. So just so you know, which is great, I love it. Just so you know, we receive water. We have 2 water sources. We receive water from surface water treatment, and we have groundwater, an aquifer. Now, I think, Quintin, that puts us at a unique advantage because we have 2 sources. So we are very resilient, and we can shift depending on different factors operationally that we may need to shift. We can make choices because we have 2 options. Now, understand that both of those options, and really in the Southeast, quantity of water where the Southeast coastal communities will get their drinking water from will be an issue in the next 10 years. It is an increasing concern for us. You're probably very familiar with the most recent groundwater discussion we had that involved Google and other groundwater users in our area. We are all trying to share that resource and to use that resource for maximum benefit while also being mindful that we don't want to negatively impact that resource. So it's a balancing act. I've been actively involved in a group, it's the Southeastern Desalting Association. The majority of their focus has been on Florida resources, of how to better manage their resources because they have increased pressure. They're a little bit ahead of us as far as the increased pressure of coastal development. So it's an excellent group to watch, to learn from, to bring some of those ideas back to Mount Pleasant Waterworks. Again, it goes to that innovation, and we need to look down the road 10, 20 years. What is the source of our drinking water, and what makes sense for the people of Mount Pleasant Waterworks?
Where is there a reduction, Alan, in the growth of customers due to the town's permit allocation system?
Run that by me again, Quintin, the reduction?
Yes, sir. Where is there a reduction in growth of customers due to the town of Mount Pleasant's permit allocation system?
We've still been adding REUs steadily each month. So if you're looking at specific areas that have reduced in growth, that question is probably better suited for the town and their planning department. But we're still adding new customers. We have seen slow and steady increase in new customers. Now, some of that may not be new properties. It may be where someone has moved out of our area and someone else has moved in. So, development questions, Quintin, and planning and Has permanent allocation impacted development? Those are really better suited for town planning, where we are providing water and wastewater services for the customers that we have.
Now, how do you analyze the physical impact of lower impact fees and new customer revenue?
Well, impact fees, we have long had a belief growth pays for growth. And when we talk about existing customers and the cost of removing and replacing existing assets, that's what our existing customers pay for. They pay for the aging pipes and replacing the aging pipes. New pipes and the expense of new, what we call expansion, is burdened by those expansion projects. So impact fees are needed to pay for that expansion. Our existing customers should not have to bear the burden of the expansion cost. And so that's what the impact fee is set up for. That's how our rate structure has been designed. Growth pays for growth. That's the premise behind it.
Yes, sir. What exactly are those expansion projects right now?
Expansion projects right now, Quintin, I don't have a list of areas where we're putting in, new sewer or new developments. I'm unaware of any what I would consider large expansion projects. But understand that, that work that was done recently in Snowden, where we're tying on septic tanks, you and I would not consider that a development expansion. However, that's new pipe in the ground to tie in customers that were not customers before. They had failing septic tanks, and so we've tied it in. So that would be considered an expansion project. So I don't want you to confuse when I say extension or expansion, oftentimes people think, oh, that's a big development coming into town. May not be a development at all. It may be a homeowner that's been in that house for 50 years and they've had a septic tank, but we need to run a line extension to reach that customer.
Yes, sir.
So again, that applies to a lot of different specific issues, sure.
What is the current capacity expansion of the wastewater treatment system?
Yeah, roughly, Quintin, again, you can get into what's your daily average, what's your monthly average, what's your yearly. We like to say we're roughly around 12.9 million gallon capacity per day that we can see. Now, that's an average. We can see spikes up to 20 million gallons, depending on rain events.
Yeah.
But here's the key point. We have more capacity today than we need right now, right? So the key is to make sure that you have enough capacity. Whether that number is 12.9 or whether you and I want to talk about what's your max day flow, as long as you can meet the needs of that max flow, you're in good shape. And I will tell you, we recently expanded Rifle Range Road Treatment Plant, the Henry Clay Duffy Wastewater Treatment Plant, a resource facility, water resource facility. That plant will carry us a long ways down the road. So that plant probably has 20 years of capacity that we have yet to see.
Wow. And what is that maximum daily flow?
Maximum daily flow, Quintin. So it's an excellent question. And someone that's not in the water business, it really depends on, is it raining? Is it not raining? What's going on, besides just wastewater treatment? Typical wastewater treatment day, we may be pushing around 9.5 million gallons a day. If we have kind of one of these episodic rain events where we receive several inches of rain, we may see upwards of 15, 16, 17 million gallons. Now, that may be for a short duration and then quickly return back to the 9 million gallons a day of wastewater. So it is important to understand that because we have to be ready and able to manage those big fluctuations. Similar to the water treatment plant. What you're looking at behind me is reverse osmosis water treatment plant. These water plants, on a day like today, in December, we may be pushing about 9.5 million gallons of drinking water. Now, come March 1st, April 1st, let's say it's dry, it hasn't rained in a while.
Right.
We've seen upwards of 15 million gallons. So our staff has to be ready to go from a 9 million gallon a day production to 15 million gallons a day production, so nearly double. So, think of another industry and imagine them being able to very quickly double capacity. And we really have to be ready and have redundant systems and prepare for that. A lot of planning goes into what we do.
What exactly is that planning?
Quintin, we have master plans. We really project our budget. Our budget's on a 2-year cycle and our capital budget is a 5-year cycle. But we look much further down the road. We have 10-year planning documents, 20-year planning documents, and build-out documents. Now, obviously, kind of the specificity is, you lose focus as you go down the road. They're extremely accurate in the near term, but it's still important to do that exercise so you know where you're going, what direction have you set. So that planning process, we are constantly in a planning phase. It seems like we're about to enter into budget phase where we get ready for our operating budget. We're on the tail end of the capital budget phase. So we are constantly, there's a season at the waterworks, and it seems like every quarter we're planning and budgeting something, preparing for the future. That's very important.
Yes, sir. And I'm going to get back to that in just a second. But does the 30-year extension to Mount Pleasant Waterworks water purchase contract with the Charleston water system appear adequate to meet the demands for services for the next decade?
It does. We have a great relationship with our wholesale supplier. They are certainly a critical part of our operation. We rely on them, and we have great relationships with them. Again, that really strengthens our resiliency. So we have groundwater and the surface water option. So that contract is very important, critical to our operations. That contract does allow for expansion if you're familiar with it. So there's the ability to expand that contract to purchase more water, and that's a guaranteed volume. So I would say that contract puts Mount Pleasant Waterworks in a very good strategic position for the future.
And how long would you extend that contract?
Well, it's a 30-year contract now.
Wow.
Quintin, I would expect that our relationship goes into perpetuity for both entities. There's our water portfolio, where our water comes from, may vary over 10, 20, 30 years. But some portion of that water, it would make sense that it is always surface water.
Yes, sir. And how would you, obviously, as general manager, help the waterworks change their leak adjustment policy so that they can notify customers when there's a continuous consumption or leak indication? I think.
Oh, yeah. I think we answered that one. I think we have done an excellent job. We are far ahead of many utilities, and we'll continue to improve that process, Quintin. But that is something that our customer service department, they are very proud of the gains we've made.
And would you use direct or indirect portable reuse in, obviously, as you mentioned earlier, the aquifer to recharge with reclaimed water?
Yeah, Quintin, you hit, so again, part of that group that I'm involved with, the CETA group, so you bring up a fairly technical topic, which is potable reuse. So first we'll explain to the viewer what potable reuse is. And that's where you take highly treated effluent, which we're currently discharging into the Charleston Harbor, and you would treat that again through several more processes to ensure that water is pure, safe drinking water. And so the concept, which California, Florida, several other states, you would return a portion or all of that highly treated water that is now pure drinking water back into the system for drinking to offset that source water demand. That would be direct potable reuse. Indirect would be where you inject that water into some environmental buffer, either an aquifer, a lake, a river, and then you consume that water afterwards. Now, understand, Quintin, the fact that I love to tell when I'm teaching a class or high school students, college level students, some people don't think about this. Right. The quantity of water on Earth today is the same quantity that has always been here, and the same quantity that will be here moving forward. So, point being, when you drink water, surface water particularly, you're drinking water that has been through indirect potable reuse, right? That is indirect potable reuse. The groundwater that we're drinking in Mount Pleasant is roughly 50,000 years old, so it is a very old water. That's just due to the nature of aquifers. But that water has also been surface water at one point, and is also indirect potable reuse. So it's just it's a technical discussion, Quintin. Whether it's right or wrong for South Carolina, that's a discussion we need to go down and have as a group. We need to have it as a state, as a community. But as these resources become more scarce and more burdened, we need to look at that. And that's exactly what California, that's exactly what Florida, and those are the discussions we're having, and that's why we're part of those groups in those states, is to better understand, one, the technical side of it, yes. The cost, the efficiency, the rules, the regulations. There's a lot to it. We are a long ways away, just so you know. We're a long ways away in our state from fully understanding or implementing that technology.
And how long would it take once you understand that to implement that particular technology?
Well, it's a good question. The membranes you're looking at behind me, the reverse osmosis treatment plant you're looking at behind me, that is the exact technology that they implement when we're talking about potable reuse. These membranes are an amazing barrier and remove all the pollutants from the water. It's kind of what I call the gold standard of water treatment.
Right.
And they do an excellent job. So technologically, if we wanted to push forward and implement something like that, the technology exists. It's a matter of cost.
Yes, sir. Speaking of cost, let me get back to the budget. What are the total operating revenues for Waterworks this year?
Total operating revenues, Quintin, somewhere in the 55, 56, $57 million range.
And where exactly do these funds come from?
Where do they come from? They come from our ratepayers. So that we, the funds for the operating budget are billed through your water bill. It's through the water and wastewater services that you receive. So a lot of time, that's a good question, Quintin. A lot of times people don't understand our revenue stream. They assume that we're a tax-based entity or that we receive taxes from state, local, federal government, which we do not. It's directly billed through your water bill for the services you receive.
Yes, sir. And what are the total expenditures right now for the Waterworks?
Total expenditures, well, a portion obviously of the $56 million budget. Some of that is going into operational costs. There's a portion of that we have to pay debt service on. So all of these plants, we carry about $170 million worth of debt right now, and that's bond issued debt to build treatment plants that we just discussed, to build water plants behind me. So they're very expensive assets, and so we debt fund that. And so that debt, we obviously pay on that each year as well to pay that debt down, and we have a plan for that. And I mentioned we invest the $20 million back in to our capital side. So it is not a for-profit business. All of the money that we receive in our operating revenue is expensed either to pay for operations or goes back into the assets we have and maintaining those assets.
And let me go back to the customers and their bills. How many cumulative water gallons are billed each month?
Oh, wow. How many cumulative water gallons? Quintin, I don't know that number, but the number I do know because we recently had a Christmas party, so I tallied up the total volumetric gallons that we used, and I want to say it was 1.9 billion gallons. I may be wrong on the billion gallons that we serve per year, but it was the same volume of water that would fill a lake 1 mile long, 1 mile wide, by 50 feet deep. So that was kind of the visual that you use. If you think of how much water we use in Mount Pleasant on an annual basis, it's a lake that's 1 mile long, 1 mile wide, and 50 feet deep. So it's a lot of water, Quintin. Roughly runs an easier way to think about it instead of doing the total, but it's roughly 10 million gallons a day during normal operations, and during drought periods or very summertime, we may be pushing 12 to 13 million gallons a day.
Wow. What are the water demand projections?
Water demand projections, which we also run those out 20 years or so to ensure that we have the right equipment in place. We've modeled a steady increase in projections, but it's just a slow growth increase. When there are no spikes or huge demands that we see coming. So I would tell you that it's kind of a linear curve moving into the future.
And are you developing any additional groundwater wells to meet those demands?
So we have several wells, what we call the Charleston Aquifer, and that is the aquifer that we understand. We spoke about previously with the concerns over withdrawal. It would be a mistake for Mount Pleasant Waterworks not to look at additional resources and additional aquifers. Are there other aquifers that could provide water for our community? So we're looking at any and all of the available sources. So to answer your question, yes, we are.
And how should the Mount Pleasant Waterworks accept new infrastructure that meet the Waterworks standards?
Well, we put out specifications through our engineering department of what we require of developers, and I assume that's what you're asking. And you have to meet those specifications, and we inspect those assets prior to accepting them into our system. That's very important that you follow our specs and that is inspected. We certainly don't want to inherit or take over assets that were not properly installed or did not meet the waterworks specs.
Yes, sir. And going back to customers once again, how many customers did Waterworks serve this past year?
Oh, wow. How many? So, total population in our area is roughly 93 to 95,000 people, I believe, individuals. We have roughly 42,000 water accounts. That grows all the time, but Quintin, I would say that it is probably close to 95,000 people that we have helped one, sustain life, provide those individuals with the quality of life that you and I understand and that we a lot of times take for granted. But there's a lot that goes into what we do. I think the respect that we get, certainly most people don't think of us as public health providers. I do. I think of what we do every day is protect the environment and public health.
Yes.
Without the waterworks, without someone providing clean water and wastewater services, the density of our community would look very different. There's no way we could have 95,000 people here without someone taking care of the wastewater and drinking water needs. So protecting public health, that's job one for us.
Yes, sir. And what's that density looking like right now?
What's the density? It varies throughout Mount Pleasant. There's the growth obviously has been down 17 and towards the 41 area most recently. So I assume that's what you're referring to. But yeah, we've grown a lot. You think about what's the density? Well, it has changed over the years. It's very different looking now than when I came to this area back in 1992. So it's a different looking area, Quintin.
Yes, indeed. And that's when the town of Arndale was established. Well, let me ask you, and I love North Mount Pleasant, by the way, but what exactly are the number of metered customers in Mount Pleasant?
What are the number of metered customers?
Yes, sir.
We have about 42,000 accounts on the water side.
Yes, sir.
So,
yeah, and I'm sorry about the delay here in this Zoom, but let me ask you, how many calls were received over the year as far as customer service?
How many calls do we receive in a year? Yeah, Quintin, I don't have that number for you. I can tell you one thing, that group of individuals that handles customer service is an extremely hardworking group. Very proud of the work that they do. But the number of calls they receive in a year, I'm not sure how to answer that for you. A lot. Some of them is, some of that is helpful calls, how to acquire service. And some of them obviously would be complaints of something that they need assistance with.
Yeah. And were there any move-in or move-out requests over the years?
Oh, yes. And I don't know the number for that either, Quintin, but certainly we do. Yeah, there's a lot of discontinuation of service requests, as well as I'm moving into a house and I need new service. The number of those per month, I'm not sure.
Okay. And obviously, we're still in COVID right now, as you know. How much funding do you have to continue to monitor those aerosols due to COVID?
How much funding? So
Yes,
we're
sir.
participating in kind of a multi-agency study on COVID. We were one of the first utilities to get into that. 6 or 7 in our state. We're working with USC and DHEC and EPA on those samples. But the amount of funding we've received is zero. So we're providing wastewater samples, and we send those for analysis through USC School of Public Health. But we haven't received any funding for that. That's something that we're doing. We feel that's important to be involved with. We want to track that for our community. But we did not receive any monetary offset or grant for that work.
And what analysis are you tracking right now, Alan?
As far as it relates to COVID, we're still maintaining weekly COVID samples at the wastewater plant. We've been doing that now for about 2 years. Other analysis, Quintin, when you say what analysis are you doing, boy, every day, all day, on water and wastewater, we're doing hundreds of analyses. So it's hard to answer that question. A lot goes into ensuring quality water. So we have a laboratory staff that works tirelessly to sample that water on the water side as well as the wastewater side.
And I forgot to ask you this, Alan, when we were talking about the budget, but how much did the operating revenues go up by?
So, Quintin, the last 2 years we have had a 0% rate increase. MPW was very sensitive to COVID and economic disruption going on and really trying to help and look out for the customer. Understand at the same time that our expenses have continued to go up, as I'm sure yours have. We're seeing, I'm receiving, Quintin, I've never seen this in my life, but I'm seeing letters from chemical suppliers, from other suppliers of ours that are pretty big increases. And some of that language is, we have seen some large increases, 7, 8, 9, 10% on some of the things that we purchase. So that is certainly impacting our operating budget. We're going to enter budgeting season in January and February. We will look at that, try to better understand our costs, certainly try to create the most efficient operation we can. But as you know, costs have increased to do business.
And I should have asked you this too earlier, but did the impact fees go down this year?
No, impact fees did not go down.
Okay.
Yep. So we've held our impact fees.
Okay.
And we'll be, like I said, we will look into to all of our budget items. That's a January, February timeline for us.
Yes, sir. And getting back to water, what have been actually the water losses over the past 5 years?
With the water loss, well, I can tell you one thing. Our field services department has done an excellent job with the water audits and tracking our water to ensure that our system, what you want to have happen, Quintin, is every drop of water that's produced behind me, we want to make sure it ends up in your house. We don't want to lose that water along the way, either through leaks or other issues going on. So we've worked pretty hard on that water audit. Likewise, on the wastewater system, which drives our expense up, we call that I&I, which is a technical term, but basically, Quintin, that's water that should not be in our sewer that gets into the sewer somehow, either through holes, cracks. There's a variety of ways that can happen. But that's important to us because we have to pay to treat that water. So both on the water audit as well as kind of I&I abatement and reducing the amount of inflow and infiltration into our system, we work around the clock to prevent that.
And this might be a complicated question, but what will be the cost for water loss control?
What's the cost for water loss control? I don't have an exact number of what we spend per year on a water audit or on our I&I. So I couldn't provide you a number on that, a financial number on it. But I can tell you it's very important to reduce that number so that we don't have to pay for treatment.
Yes, sir. Earlier you talked about snouting, and we all know the issues over there. But are there any current annexation demands?
Are there any current annexation demands? Annexation and the ordinance in county and town is a very complicated discussion, Quintin. I am not aware of any current annexation issues where we have a group that, where there's a problem. But that is a complicated ordinance, and it's bigger than just the ordinance too, because you have the cost of service. When we mentioned that extension and expansion, putting wastewater lines in the ground is very expensive. We discussed earlier, growth kind of pays for growth. That's our mentality. It becomes very complicated when you have an existing home, and now they're wanting a wastewater extension, or a requirement would be. Typically, when a development comes in, the cost of those line extensions, the cost of that wastewater service and that infrastructure is wrapped into the developer's cost. And so the developer passes that along in the cost of that home. When you have an existing house, that falls on to the homeowner. And it's very expensive to run some of these lines. That cost of service is very expensive. So there's really two discussions. And one of them is annexation, as you mentioned, and it's the ordinance discussion and how can we handle that. And then the second component of that is, how are we going to pay for this extension? What is the cost? We constantly, again, you and I talked about planning and looking into that. We've looked at sewering the unsewered areas. This number is fairly old, so the costs have escalated greatly in the last few years. But it was roughly $90 million to sewer some of those unsewered areas. That was the total cost. So at a cost of $90 million, where does that money come from? And that's a complicated question. And that is directly tied to your question of annexation and ordinance. But there's a financial component of that as well.
Yeah. What are you focused on right now as far as those unsewered areas? Where exactly are those located in the town of Mount Pleasant? Septic
tanks, unsewered areas. We have some septic tanks in the Shem Creek area.
Oh, yes.
We have septic tanks in the Sound area. We have septic tanks in the Hamlin area.
Oh, yes.
We have those identified. And we have plans to begin to work on that. Again, we recently brought in numerous homes in the Snowden community. So there are plans, but again, there's financial expenses and consequences to that as well.
What's the estimate of a project? Okay, let me ask you this. What's an estimate of the projected growth of the water system?
What's an estimate of the projected growth? Again, we increase several percent per year in demand. I would expect a steady increase over the years in the water projection. Quintin, that's a hard question to answer today, and you have to give me specifics. But are we talking what does our 2040 demand look like?
Oh, you can talk about that as well. Sure, go for it.
Yeah, I think the challenge for us. So what the exact day demand is in 2040? Would probably be around the 15, 17, 18 million gallons a day. Which is why we are actively pursuing other sources to ensure that we have the quantity of water that's needed. So I think when we talk about managing the Charleston Aquifer, the 30-year contract with Charleston Water, looking at different aquifers, the discussion over reuse, all of those are what I would consider tools in our toolbox to meet that 2040 demand projection. That's why we're looking at it today. We need to plan today for that demand in 2040. We're in an excellent position today. I want to make sure that the next general manager is in an excellent position. So we need to continue that discussion and looking down the road to make sure the resources are available.
What will be the impacts of present and probable future drinking water quality regulations?
Water quality regulations, Quintin, we have seen, changes, and we know there are changes coming. We could pick out a variety of whether you want to talk about lead and copper issues recently, whether you want to talk about PFAS, the perfluorinated compounds that you've seen. Yes. We know stricter regulations are coming. Again, to a point I made earlier, the technology behind me produces the gold standard in water quality. That reverse osmosis treated water is extremely high quality water. As the regulations come and tighten up, we feel we are in an excellent position, not only to meet those regulations, but certainly currently and in the future, we will always strive to exceed those regulations. We're in a very good position. But I do project regulations will tighten nationally.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I'm so sorry. I got some noise in the background here that threw me
off. No, you're good.
I know who this is talking to me. But what's the historical water use in the town of Mount Pleasant?
Historical water use, again, that has increased, gradually over time. As we add new customers, as we expand, that water use increases for everyone that moves here. So we've gradually increased over time, which is why we recognize the reason to have that surface water contract. That's why that was put in place. Again, we plan for the future. So we're planning today for what's going to happen 10, 20 years from now.
And I was just in the old village on Tuesday for work. But let me ask you this. What's the decision?
You should have swung by, Quintin.
gotta find your location first.
Yeah.
Okay, the historic water tower. Was it the right decision to take that down?
I believe it was, Quintin. That was a decision that was near and dear to my heart. I think we were all sad to see that piece of infrastructure come down. It had been there so long. So that decision was not made lightly. It was made based on numerous engineering reports and structural analysis. So on the one side, Quintin, I say it was sad. It was sad to see that tank come down, a piece of history. But at the same time, it was absolutely the right decision based on the structural analysis. We had the reports in hand. We knew there were concerns with wind loading and certainly some very big concerns with hurricane season approaching. But if you were on site when they took the tank down, which I was there all day,
yes.
I spoke with the demolition crew, which confirmed what we knew, but it was nice to hear. Those guys said that tank was it was in extremely poor shape, worse than the reports indicated. And if you were on site, you could see that. It was time for the tank to come down. But it was a sad day. And as you know, if you followed that story, it's a bit dated now, but that tank had not been used in 25 years, other than for cell phone service.
Yes.
So, the cost of repairs were over $1 million to restore that tank. And again, it was not used. It was not critical infrastructure for our drinking water system. So to me, yes, it was the right decision. Was it a sad decision? Yeah, it was. I was sad to see it come down. But I do feel it was the right decision. And I'm certainly glad it did not come down in an uncontrolled manner, such as a hurricane. The cap on that, the witch's cap that's on top, they refer to that as the witch's cap, really neat looking structure. That witch's cap was not fashioned, it was not connected to that tank in any way. All of the pieces that should have connected it were rusted through and broken. So that the witch's cap was sitting on top of the rest of the tank. So if there would have been a high wind event, the top of that tank would have been gone. So you asked me, was it the right time to take it down? Certainly was. I'm glad we could take it down in a controlled manner versus the alternatives. But it was still sad.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk obviously, but obviously you probably had to pay $1 million to get that restored. Did you have that in the budget?
$1 million to restore a cell tower? I think you know the answer to that.
Yes, sir. Well, let me ask you this. Oh, yeah, going on to something else. Let me ask you this. Who owns the actual water system? Does the town of Mount Pleasant do, or do you all own it?
Who owns it? So it's a good question because our relationship with the town is often confused. A lot of people feel that we are the town of Mount Pleasant. We're not. We're a commissioner of public works. We have a public body that elected officials at large, commissioners, that make the decisions for Mount Pleasant Waterworks. We do require the town, if we're borrowing money, I told you we roughly have $170 million in debt, which is bond funded. The town has to give us their approval for debt. So anytime that we have a large project, $75 million wastewater treatment plant upgrade, the town has to agree to that debt. So that is our relationship with the town. And I would say we have an excellent relationship with the town. We have a water supply committee. The mayor sits on our commissioners as well, plus a water supply appointee. So we have a great relationship with the town. We obviously want to work very closely together. However, we are not the same entity, which is often confused.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Well, Alan Clum with the Mount Pleasant Waterworks, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Oh, you got it. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, Quintin. And one day we'll have coffee together, man. I look forward to it.
Likewise. I'll be ready for it.
You got it. Thank you. Take care.
Likewise.